The more you let go, the more comes back to you. That may sound like nonsense, like a trick of words or a cruel riddle that life plays on us. How could it be that by loosening your grip on something you want, it finds its way back to you with greater certainty? Yet this is the oldest truth of nature, whispered through rivers, winds, and seasons long before human beings wrote it down. Imagine standing by a riverbank. The water moves with perfect ease, bending around stones, flowing around obstacles, never once stopping to plan its route, never once demanding that the sea hurry toward it. And yet, without struggle, it arrives. Now picture autumn leaves released from their branches. They don't fight gravity. They don't cling to the tree in panic. They let go. And in that letting go, they join the dance of the wind, the soil, the rain, the cycle of life itself. Love is no different. The more you cling to the desperate need for love, the further it seems to slip from your hands. The more you demand affection, attention, and reassurance, the more people sense the weight of your grasp and begin to pull away. And yet, when you stop needing, when you loosen your grip and open your hands, love has a way of appearing in the most unexpected places. This is the paradox of love. The tighter we hold it, the quicker it escapes. The moment we stop grasping, it flows naturally toward us, like water rushing back to the sea. But why? Why does life seem to reward us when we stop insisting, when we finally admit we are not in control? Here lies the central question. What happens when we stop gripping so tightly? What happens when instead of hunting love like prey, we live openly, curiously, with a willingness to be surprised? Could it be that the love we long for is not something to be hunted or demanded, but something that arrives when we finally stop chasing it? This is not to say that longing for love is wrong. Longing is human, tender, and true. But the danger is in mistaking longing for need, and need for control. When we make love into a possession, something to secure, something to keep, we choke the very freedom it needs to breathe. Love, like rivers and leaves, belongs to movement, to trust, to letting go. And so the paradox unfolds. The path to finding love begins not with the hunt, but with release, with learning how to unclench your hands, how to trust the current, how to live fully even in the absence of what you desire. Only then, like the rivers meeting with the sea, does love find its way back to you. There's an old story about a young man who wanted nothing more than to be loved. He thought about it day and night, certain that if he could just win someone's affection, his life would finally feel complete. So he worked at it with all the intensity of a full-time job. He memorized clever jokes, read books on attraction, and rehearsed conversations in his head before every social gathering. When he went on dates, he listened, but only enough to find the right moment to impress. He gave gifts, not because he wanted to, but because he thought it was the strategy that would secure affection. And yet, no matter how hard he tried, people slipped away. They sensed something beneath his polished words, something that felt heavy, his need. Exhausted, he once confessed to a friend, "I don't understand. I do everything right, but people keep leaving." His friend smiled gently and replied, "That's exactly the problem. You're doing everything for love, instead of simply being yourself in love. You're chasing it so hard that you're driving it away." It's not unlike the farmer's tale of sorting potatoes. A farmer once asked his helper to sort potatoes into 3 piles: small, medium, and large. By the end of the day, the helper quit, not because of the physical labor, but because the endless small decisions drained him. It wasn't the heavy lifting that broke him. It was the constant pressure of choosing, grasping, and controlling. In the same way, the young man exhausted himself by constantly managing every detail of how love might appear. Every smile became a test, every silence a failure, every text message a calculation. Love wasn't free anymore, it was work. And like the helper, he eventually collapsed, not from the weight of life, but from the burden of clinging to something that cannot be forced. And here's the paradox. It was only when he finally gave up, when he stopped chasing love like a prize, that love quietly walked into his life. He started focusing on his own passions again, not as a tactic, but because he was tired of pretending. He began enjoying evenings alone, taking walks without hoping someone would notice him, laughing without wondering who was watching. And in that space of ease, someone saw him, not the mask, not the effort, but him. This is the hidden truth. People are not drawn to need, they are drawn to freedom. When you stop gripping so tightly, others feel the room to breathe around you. Love is less like a contract and more like a dance. It cannot begin until both partners feel the rhythm of trust, and trust cannot live where need tries to control. What the young man discovered is what so many of us eventually face: the exhaustion of overthinking, overmanaging, and overneeding. Love, when turned into a project, becomes heavy. We analyze texts, replay conversations, and strategize our every move as if affection were a math equation waiting to be solved. And yet, the more we calculate, the more life slips out of our hands. This isn't just about romance. It's about the way we approach everything we long for. When we try to control outcomes, we burn ourselves out. Think of it like holding water in your hands. The harder you squeeze, the more it escapes through your fingers. What we want most cannot be seized. It can only be received. Nature illustrates this everywhere. Rivers don't force their way to the sea. They simply flow, bending, pausing, circling, and yet inevitably arriving. Seeds don't demand the earth to hurry. They rest in the soil, waiting for the right season. Even the sun, that great giver of life, does not shout or chase. It simply shines, and life responds. So why do we, as human beings, believe we must grip, demand, and control in order to find what we seek? The answer lies in fear. We fear that if we stop clinging, everything will vanish. But paradoxically, the act of clinging is what suffocates life. As Alan Watts once put it, nature itself pries your fingers open and shows you the illusion of control. When we cling to the need for love, we turn relationships into cages. We may not realize it, but our subtle neediness communicates pressure. Stay with me, fill me, complete me. And pressure is the one thing love cannot endure. Love thrives in freedom, in the space where two people choose, not because they must, but because they want to. It's the same principle in friendships, in creative work, even in spiritual life. The more we force, the more we tire ourselves with endless small decisions. Should I say this or that, act now or later, give more or hold back? Like the potato sorter, we collapse under the weight of our own constant measuring. Life becomes a maze of micro-decisions instead of a dance of trust. But when we step back, when we let go of the desperate need to control, something changes. Space opens. Energy returns. Instead of a clenched fist, we become an open hand, and open hands are capable of receiving. This is the life principle hidden in plain sight. What you need most will find you when you stop insisting. Just as rivers find the sea and leaves find the soil, love finds its way to those who no longer make a prison of their longing. Life often places us at a crossroads, and the way we relate to love is no different. There are two paths we can take. One is the path of control, the attempt to grasp, manage, and orchestrate every detail of how love should appear. The other is the path of trust, the willingness to move with life's rhythm, to allow love to arrive in its own time and in its own form. On the path of control, we live in constant tension. We measure ourselves against impossible standards, rehearsing conversations in our heads, reading hidden meanings into every silence. Every relationship becomes a monarchy. One ruler, one plan, one person trying to dictate the flow of events. And like any monarchy, it breeds rebellion. The more we try to govern love with rules and expectations, the more others push back. Control breeds anxiety, burnout, and separation. It isolates us because no one feels free under the weight of another's need. On the path of trust, however, something very different happens. Life begins to resemble a forest ecosystem rather than a kingdom. In the forest, no single tree commands the sunlight. No bird dictates the song. No stream orders the direction of its current. Everything thrives because power is shared, because each part nourishes the whole. Relationships, too, flourish when built on cooperation instead of control, when love is allowed to breathe rather than being suffocated by demands. Think about how you feel when someone simply enjoys your presence without needing you to be anything other than yourself. There's no script to follow, no throne to bow to. There's space to laugh, to stumble, to be real. That is trust. And in that space, love deepens, not because it is forced, but because it is free. Alan Watts once remarked that true strength is found not in domination, but in alignment. When we align with life, when we stop fighting to force the river, and instead let it carry us, we discover that love has its own intelligence. It knows where to flow, whom to touch, when to appear. Our role is not to command it, but to make ourselves open to it. So the choice is clear. Path 1, a monarchy of control, where fear rules and exhaustion reigns. Path 2, a democracy of trust, where freedom allows connection to grow naturally. And here's the memorable truth worth carrying. Shared power nourishes all things without dominating anything. When love is no longer a cage, but a shared freedom, it becomes what it was always meant to be, not a possession, but a gift. Up to now, we've spoken about letting go of control, about trusting life's rhythm. But there is a deeper step, one that feels almost unbearable to the mind. Stepping into not knowing. We spend our lives trying to figure everything out: when love will arrive, how it will look, who it will be, what the future holds. We believe knowledge will give us security, that if we can map the territory, we'll finally feel safe. Yet strangely, the more we cling to certainty, the more restless we become. Certainty, like control, is a prison. There is another way. Instead of, I must know, what if we practiced, I don't know? At first, it feels like weakness, like admitting failure. But in truth, I don't know is liberation. It's the crack in the armor where life can finally surprise us. Think of a blade. It cannot cut itself. Light cannot shine on itself. The eye cannot look directly at itself. In the same way, we cannot fully grasp love by trying to define or control it. Love resists capture because its very nature is mystery. And in admitting, I don't know, we open to that mystery. Consider this. When you first fell in love, whether with a person, a passion, or even a place, was it because you had everything calculated? Or was it because something unexpected, something unexplainable, swept you off your feet? The deepest joys in life rarely arrive by plan. They arrive by surprise. Alan Watts often reminded us that life is not a problem to be solved, but a dance to be lived. And in a dance, you cannot predict every step. If you try, you kill the rhythm. Real love, the kind that endures, is born in the spaces where we allow ourselves to be surprised, where we say, what I really want is tied to what you want. And what you want? I don't know. Surprise me. To live this way is not to be careless, but to be curious. To walk through life as though it were a garden of wonders, not a puzzle box with one correct solution. Love grows in curiosity. It deepens in the willingness to say, I don't know where this will go, but I'm here for the adventure. And so, the mystery is not an obstacle, but a gift. The unknown is not a void, but a womb from which new life emerges. By surrendering the need to know, we free ourselves to actually live, to love, to be moved by what we never could have predicted. We began with a paradox. The more you let go, the more comes back to you. At first, it seemed absurd, even cruel. How could releasing something you long for be the very thing that allows it to arrive? And yet, after walking through the river's flow, the autumn leaves fall, the young man's exhaustion, and the forest's quiet cooperation, perhaps it makes sense now. Love cannot be forced, because its essence is freedom. The moment you grip it, you smother it. The moment you chase it, it flees. But the moment you allow it to move, like water, like wind, it finds its way back, often more powerfully than you ever could have imagined. Decay and impermanence, the very things we fear, are not our enemies, but our allies. They remind us that everything is in motion, that nothing stays fixed, that love itself is alive because it is not static. If every relationship, every joy, every connection were locked in place forever, they would lose their vitality. It is precisely because life flows, because love changes, because people and moments cannot be possessed, that they hold such beauty. This is not a message of despair. It is one of profound hope. When you stop needing love to appear in a certain way, you discover that love is already here, flowing through 1,000 hidden channels, in the kindness of a stranger, in the laughter of friends, in the quiet moments of your own heart when you realize you are alive. And when love does arrive, whether in romance, friendship, or something entirely unexpected, it arrives not as a trophy, but as a gift. You meet it not with desperation, but with gratitude. You no longer cling to it with white knuckles, because you know If it is real, it flows freely. And if it leaves room for what is meant to come. So let us return to the river. Stand at its edge. Watch how it carries everything with it. Branches, stones, leaves, even your reflection. Without effort, without demand. The river is never anxious about reaching the sea, yet it always arrives. And so it is with love. Here is the invitation. Let the river carry you. Trust the tide. Live with open hands instead of clenched fists. What is yours will arrive in its own season, not because you hunted it down, but because you were ready. Ready to welcome it without fear, ready to let it go if it must leave, ready to live fully in the dance of life. Love is not found by needing, it is found by being.